Good day, Bannerlords. In this video, you will learn how to engage enemies of a similar size with an entire party of Aserai mounted units as a racist Aserai General. I shared details about the pros and cons of running such a setup and how to combat smaller groups in the previous video of this series. Engaging similar size or larger groups is not ideal, as there is a good chance that you will lose some units. However, you can use this approach if necessary. At the start of the battle, I commanded the troops to follow me and split the formation of mounted melee units into two. As I moved ahead, I realized that the opponent had adopted an offensive strategy. Based on the composition of the opponent's troops, I decided to take out as many of their mounted units that were incoming first. It is important not to let your troops get too close to the enemy's main force, as they will get taken out quickly if they do. Reposition your troops far away before it happens and look for an opportunity to kill the opponent's mounted units from the new position. The ideal choice for this new position depends on the type of troops you're trying to eliminate and how you plan to do so. As a general rule of thumb, I prefer to engage mounted ranged units with melee weapons to conserve ammunition while reducing their combat effectiveness. The approach against mounted melee units depends on how many you are facing. I recommend killing them with melee weapons if it is just a few of them, and giving the green light to use jarrets against larger groups. It helps to position your troops behind natural cover like a hill if you have mounted ranged units approaching. Without a line of sight, these units will not be able to attack you from range, allowing you to close the distance safely as you charge towards them. On the other hand, high ground without obstructions is preferred if you plan to use ranged weapons to strike approaching enemies. Repeat the steps as the enemy's force catch up. Also, double check on the direction your troops are facing. The ranged units will not fire at the enemy if they are facing the wrong direction.
Cavalry forward! Out to move! Cavalry forward!
Let us take a look at what happened from the top down. I started the fight by leading all the mounted units into the group of enemy mounted units. I then commanded them to back away before the enemy's ground force got too close. Upon arriving at the new position, I ordered the mounted ranged units to fire arrows before commanding the mounted melee units to charge again. Like before, I got my units to back away as the enemy's ground force got nearer. I continued keeping a distance from the enemy troops as I weeded them down with volleys of arrows. You may have noticed that Formation 1 had been instructed not to use their jarrets. As each unit only carries a few of them, I sometimes choose to have some available for use if required later in the fight. You want to rely on the mounted ranged units to do most of the heavy lifting. Pay attention to the movement of the enemy troops. There may be opportunities to attack the archers now and then. When it reveals itself, take a group of mounted melee units and charge through them to reduce their numbers. Did you notice the group of archers all spread out on the right? Units in loose formation are harder to hit with ranged weapons but are vulnerable to mounted melee units charging through them. Ensure that your ranged units are sufficiently far from incoming melee troops if you plan to execute such a maneuver. Make sure to stay on the move to avoid incoming arrows. If you happen to miss your targets, carry on riding before making a turn, as there is a good chance that you are now in the sights of several archers. Do not forget about your ranged units. Constantly monitor their status and ensure a safe distance between them and the enemy's ground troops. You can use the fallback command if you do not have a visual but sense that they might be in danger. You can then override that command with more precise instructions on positioning once you are close. What you see here is a risky move on my part. Do not charge into a group that is ready to strike you. You will know if the enemy troops are prepared for you if you see them lifting their weapons as you approach. The same thing applies to archers. You can tell if you're within sight of several of them. When that happens, ride defensively and away from them, drawing their fire in the opposite direction. As I usually move with a small group of royal guards, this move exposes their backs for a clean strike. Let us take a look from the top down again. As the troops carried on backpedaling while firing arrows, I took a chance to charge into a group of exposed archers with a formation of mounted melee units. Meanwhile, the mounted ranged units carried on killing the enemy infantry units. Upon returning, most of the enemy infantry had been defeated, and the remaining started to flee. Now that only enemy archers remain, I commanded the mounted melee units to charge with their melee weapons. Charging in melee works best against archers in situations like this. Even though the risk of losing some units when charging into archers is still present, this is a more lethal option. With so few enemy units left, you could also consider sending out your mounted ranged units to charge in melee. If the fight drags on, even though the enemy has so few units left, there is a good chance that the enemy commander is still alive. Do attempt to kill them early in the battle if you have the opportunity to end the fight quicker. I hope that you have enjoyed watching this video. Kindly click the like and subscribe buttons if you did. Your support is greatly appreciated. Also, do connect with me on Twitter for updates on upcoming videos.